Welcome back. Okay, let's dive straight into this today because we're about to completely dismantle the traditional way you've been taught to set goals. Seriously, if you have ever set a big goal on January 1st only to watch it completely evaporate by mid-February, I need you to listen closely. You've probably been told your whole life to use the standard SMART goal framework, right? You know the drill. Make it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It sounds incredibly responsible. But what if I told you that this exact framework is actually setting you up for frustration? Today, we are going to transform that wishful thinking into a truly engineered system for physical vitality.
Look at a standard SMART goal for a second. It's usually something like, I want to run a 5K by November and work out 3 times a week to improve my stamina. Well, that sounds solid, doesn't it? But here's the problem. It completely lacks a true foundation and a real business case for your life. The sentence itself is not a system. It is literally just a wish floating in space with a deadline attached to it. And the second your motivation fades, that wish collapses. Let me be super clear about this. You do not lack discipline and you do not lack motivation. You just have a bad process.
So to build a better process, we've got to look under the hood. It turns out goals are actually psychological signals. We're all experiencing what psychologists call an approach avoidance conflict. Simply put, your goals are flashing signals indicating whether you're running away from something, like pain, chaos, or embarrassment, or running towards something, like peace, energy, and freedom. Understanding this dynamic is absolutely crucial. It's the key to figuring out exactly why your motivation suddenly vanishes right when you need it most.
And let's be real, things will get hard because of something called the trigger chain. This brilliantly illustrates how self-sabotage actually happens. It's not some deep character flaw you have. It's just a predictable sequence. Look at step 1, the trigger. This is the spark. Your nervous system reacts to this spark long before your logic or your conscious thoughts even get a vote. The spark fires, and then the thought or the story forms, something like, I'm gonna fail again. Then comes the feeling, like anxiety. Then the behavior, which is usually avoidance. And finally, the result, zero progress. It's wild to realize that if we try to stop this chain way down at step 4 using sheer willpower, we are basically setting ourselves up to lose from the start. So what do? We have to identify what happens at the very beginning of that chain. We call this signal 1, or the physical drop. The trigger doesn't start as a thought. It literally starts in your body. It's a specific physical sensation. Maybe it's a heavy weight in your chest or suddenly shallow breathing. Catching this somatic data point early with a sense of genuine curiosity is the absolute highest leverage move you can make. If you can intercept that physical drop with a small action, like maybe 3 minutes of heart-focused breathing, you can change the entire downstream sequence before that negative story even forms in your head. But here is a critical prerequisite, and we cannot skip this. You absolutely cannot build an engineered system for physical vitality on a foundation of bodily self-hatred or judgment. Most of us have parts of our bodies we've spoken badly about for years, right? We let our ego victimize us with made-up standards of perfection. When you notice yourself having shameful thoughts toward your body, remember this. Forgive yourself in the moment for judging the perfection of the physical creation that is you. Take a deep breath, center yourself, and shift to an empathetic mindset. Your body is just trying to serve you to the best of its current ability. We must establish this baseline of gratitude before we can re-engineer your habits. Once we have that foundation of grace locked in, we can bring out the heavy machinery. So, as a process engineer, I use something called the DMAIC framework. It's a 5-phase methodology created to solve incredibly complex root causes of failure in manufacturing. But let me tell you, it is shockingly powerful for personal transformation. The phases are define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. We are ditching the vague wishes of SMART goals and applying clinical, guaranteed process engineering straight to your physical stamina.
And what's really beautiful is how this clinical precision weaves so perfectly into the journey of personal growth. The 5 DMAIC phases map directly to the Transcend by Faith Lotus Journey. We start as a buried seed in the dark mud, we push through the murky water as a stem, and eventually we emerge into full bloom. It cuts through the noise and leaves you with absolute clarity. For this explainer, we're going to focus heavily on just the first 2 phases, the mud and the sprouting. So let's start right in the mud. Phase 1 is define. Traditional SMART goal setting tells you to simply be specific, but the DMAIC framework mandates that you be honest about where you actually are right now. This is the dark, messy mud of your starting point, and we have to confront that reality if we want to grow out of it. Instead of saying something generic, we need to name the uncomfortable truth. A real engineered defined statement looks more like this. Over the past 18 months,
my physical stamina has dropped significantly, to the point where I get winded carrying groceries or playing with my kids. This lack of energy has cost me my confidence. If this pattern continues, it will impact my long-term health and limit my ability to fully engage in the calling on my life. My goal is to build enough strength and cardiovascular endurance to complete a 5K by November so I can reclaim my vitality. See the difference there? That states the exact physical and emotional cost. It completely shifts the focus from simple aesthetics to absolute ownership. Once you've defined the raw truth of the mud, we move to phase 2, measure. This is the sprouting phase. Now, full transparency, most people skip this step because looking at your baseline data is highly uncomfortable, but you literally cannot improve what you do not measure.
The crucial takeaway is this. Measurement is where self-deception dies and real change becomes possible. Collecting data, like finding out your true resting heart rate or honestly tracking how many push-ups you can do today, isn't an act of judgment. Remember, we left judgment behind. This data is simply the mathematical baseline required for true growth.
We are prioritizing precision over vagueness here. You need to implement monitoring systems. By keeping track of your key metrics for a minimum of 90 days, you ensure the change becomes fully embedded into your identity. You are proving to yourself with hard, undeniable data that you are someone who shows up. But hey, let's be real for a second. Even with the perfect DMAIC foundation, this system is going to experience friction. You are gonna have bad days, you will stumble. And that is exactly why we build in a safety net, the 48-hour reset protocol. See, most people have a plan for success, but almost no one has a plan for failure. This protocol is designed to catch you when you crash, ensuring you bounce back in 48 hours instead of spiraling for 6 months. So how does this sequence actually work? It has to run in this exact order. First, interrupt. You stop the spiral fast with a physical action. Step outside, splash cold water on your face, whatever works. Second, regulate. This is where you allow yourself to feel disappointed without judgment. Why do we do emotional regulation first? Because decisions made from a dysregulated nervous system are almost always the wrong decisions. Only after you're calm do you move to step 3, tell the truth. This is an objective analysis of what went wrong. No shame, just data. And to make absolutely sure you never fully stop moving forward, we use the minimum viable version matrix. When you're off track, this is your standard operating procedure. If you are at 100% capacity, great, crush that 60-minute workout. But what about the days when your capacity drops? At 75%, do a 30-minute workout. At 50%, moderate difficulty, take a 15-minute walk. And when you are at 25% and life is an absolute dumpster fire, you put on your shoes and do 5 push-ups. The point is, you don't quit. You just scale down the effort to match your capacity for the day. Because the core engineering truth is this: setbacks are data, not defeat. Every production failure in the real world is solved by collecting information, not by assigning blame. When you miss a target, it is entirely devoid of shame. You simply look at the data, trigger your 48-hour reset, do your 25% effort if you have to, and course correct. Okay, it's time for an immediate call to action. I want you to apply this approach avoidance psychology right now, today. What are you running from? And what are you running toward? Actually writing this down and sharing it is the exact mechanism that moves you from wishful thinking to intentional ownership. So go ahead, drop your answers in the comments below. I really want to read what you're stepping into. And as you're typing that out, let me tell you where this engineered journey is taking us next. This explainer is just part 1 of our 3-part goal-setting pillar. Coming up in part 2, we are going to walk through the exact step-by-step template to write out your own robust DMAIC define statement. And in part 3, we're going to dive into the later stages of the process, specifically building a control plan so you never relapse into those old patterns again. I want to leave you with this final reminder about your minimum viable version matrix. Whether you gave 100%, 75%, 50%, or literally just 25% on a dumpster fire day, all 4 levels count. They keep your identity intact as someone who says, I am someone who keeps going. So as we get ready to write your specific define statement in part 2, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. If you applied just 25% effort on your hardest days for the next year, what kind of engineered vitality would you finally unlock?